And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Ryan Metzler.
Hey everyone, it's Ryan Metzler here, and today we're going to be taking a look at a game from thegamecrafter.com. This is a game called Field Hospital, which is by Diamond K Games, and this is a game where each player is going to be a kind of doctor who's trying to heal trauma patients from a battlefield before they reach the point of critical attention and die. So you're going to be trying to collect different types of medical goods in order to heal patients before they reach the end of the line, and if you fail to heal these patients before they reach that point, you're going to take demerits, which are going to be negative victory points at the end of the game. The player who most successfully manages to collect goods, heal the appropriate patients, and collect them into their healed patient pile is going to be the winner. So real quick, why don't we check out what comes inside this box, how the game plays, and then I'll give you some final summary thoughts on it. So Field Hospital is going to be a game about healing patients as they come into a medical trauma center off of a battlefield. And in order to heal these patients, which will be represented by cards in a deck, you can see one here, I'll go over these later, you're going to be using different medical supplies. So you'll see, for example, there are these yellow chips here. These are wild general supplies. They're going to be one of any type of supply that you want. You'll start with some of these and not be able to get more. But there's going to be other different types of chips which represent other supplies. So for example, we have a red chip. This would represent blood, and these are all going to be outlined on a card. We have purple, which is antibiotics, and green, which is painkillers. We have blue, which is going to be saline, and white, which are bandages. Now you'll see that there's a die that corresponds with all of these, and during rounds of the game you're going to be rolling these dice to see how many of these goods are available. Additionally, you're going to have black chips, and black chips are going to be demerits, and you're going to get these when you fail to heal a patient and you are the most able person in the game to heal that person. So, you can see all these supplies. Now this deck of cards, as I said, is going to be mostly comprised of different types of patients, which I'll go over later. You have some personal records cards, which are going to go in front of the individual players for storing their different types of goods and for storing some other things. And then you're going to have different types of emergency centers. They'll all have numbers on them, and this is going to dictate how your patients come out. You'll see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there's also some overflow spots. So, why don't we set the game up like it's meant to be played, and then I'll show you kind of how it works. So the concept of the game, as I mentioned, is that you're going to have patients coming into different triage or different centers where they need to be healed. And you'll see that in this case we're in a 3-player game, and there are 4 different centers. We have the emergency center, the trauma ward, the urgent care, and triage. So increasing severity of injury here. And at the beginning of the game you're going to be putting out patients from this deck equal to 5 times the number of players in their urgency number. So you'll see here they have these treatment numbers that they need. 1, 5, 5, so there's 11. And the numbers out here are going to add up to over 15 because this is a 3-player game. You're also going to make sure to place them in the appropriate ward. So you'll see here this one's a 4. When I flip it out, it's going to come into the 4 area. Now, on a player's turn, they're going to do several things. First, at the beginning of the game, you'll choose a start player, and that player will be the first player for the whole game, which is important for resolving how the game ends. But at the beginning of a player's turn, they're going to check and see if there are no available dice. Well, on the first turn, there are no available dice, but they're going to roll all of these dice on their turn, and they're going to look at what comes out. Now, you'll see we have a 4, a 5, a 2, another 5, and a 6. That's great. Now, a player is going to be able to, at the beginning of their turn, take some of these dice. And they're going to take dice until they add up to 6. So what they can choose to do is they can just choose to take this 6 white. That's great. They would get 6 white tokens and add them to their supply. So let's say the first player did that. They would take these 6 tokens, they'd add them to their tokens, they'd be done. But they could also, for example, choose to take this 2. And they would get 2 green, but now they would have to take another die if they could take another die and be still under 6, or at or under 6. So they could take the 2 and the 4, and they would have 2 green and 4 purple. Now, if they decided to take something like the 5, they'd get 5 red here, but they would be unable to take another die. For doing so, they're going to be able to take any one chip from the supply of a color that they didn't take. So if they took this red 5, they could take any other 1 token and add it to their supply, giving them a total of 6 chips. So you should always get at least 6 chips. After you have taken your stuff, you're going to be able to choose and heal 1 patient from this area. Now, you'll see that patients have required medical supplies on them to heal them. You'll see here this one requires 6 green and 6 blue in order to heal this patient. And when you take him, you're going to put him in your own little supply, pay the resources, and he'll be worth 17 victory points at the end of the game. Now there's some other symbols on here. As I said in the top here, this is the ward that they flip into when they come out. This number here is those urgency numbers when you flip them over, and then at the top they're going to have symbols which denote what squadron they are from. And you'll see these are all different, but these are special because there are certain cards that give you bonuses for collecting guys in certain squadrons. So for example, we have this sergeant here, who is part of this star squadron, and you can tell he's a sergeant because he has the chevrons on his card. He takes 3 to heal, but he gives you a bonus at the end of the game for each of these guys with the star that you've collected. So if you collected 1, he's worth 1 point. If you collected 2, he's worth 3, 4, 7, and onward and upward. So you're going to be trying to heal these guys if you have sergeants trying to collect the same guys. And there is one other kind of special guy that you need to worry about, and this is going to be the medic. Now when you collect medics, they're not worth any points, but they're going to allow you to heal guys from their own regiment easier. So you'll see this guy belongs to this green and red shield regiment up here. If I were to try and heal this guy here in the third area, the urgent care center, I would pay 2 less goods, 0 to 2 less goods in order to heal him. So it's going to make healing guys from your own regiment a little bit easier. After you've healed someone, so let's say that, for example, this person took the 6 white, and they put their 6 white onto their sheet, and they decided to heal somebody. If they could, they would pay their 6 white, or for example, they can heal this 3 purple guy because these 3 yellows are wild. So they could pay all of their wild yellows back to the supply, take the purple guy into their in their play area. He'd stay face up because he's a sergeant, but if it was anybody else except for a sergeant or medic, it would go face down, and you would move on to the next phase of the round, which is going to be adding patients for the healed patient. So you'll see this guy has an urgency of 1. I need to refill at least 1 urgency into the supply, so I would flip a card. This guy's got a 3 urgency. He would go into Trauma Ward 4. And now we would move on to the next phase, and the next phase is going to be passing the turn to the left, to the next player. So now only 1 die was taken. We'd check and see if there are any more dice. There are still dice, so the next player would take some dice. Maybe they took these 2. They have the option of healing a patient or passing, and then it would refill, and it would go to the next person, and they still have dice to choose until all of these dice are taken. Now, at the start of somebody's turn, when one of these dice, or when all of these dice have been taken, you're going to do what's called an update urgency. And basically what's going to happen here is that everybody is going to shift 1 spot to the left. So it's going to happen that eventually all of these cards are going to shift to the left. They are becoming more urgent. You need to heal them sooner or bad things are going to happen, and you would then count and see if this number is still greater than 15 because there's 3 players. If not, you would flip it over and you would start again with more rounds, re-rolling the dice and continuing on. Now eventually you'll see there was nobody in the first center at the beginning of the game, but eventually you're going to hit a spot where you're going to have people sliding off the board. There will be people shifting to the left, and there's nowhere for them to go, or sorry, shifting to the right, and there's nowhere for them to go except for out. At that point you're going to check and see who has the most resources that match these types that could have been used to heal this patient. And that person is going to get what's called a demerit. And this is going to be negative points at the end of the game for the players who have them. You'll subtract some points for having for each of these that you have, and that will help reduce your final score. Now, one thing I didn't mention is that instead of healing somebody on your turn, you can do what's called training. And training is simply taking a good that you already have. So for example, let's say this player wants to train in white. They bypass healing, and they can take this thing. They wouldn't have all these on their card. They would have them set aside. But they could take this white chip, which is bandages, and they could place it on their personal records card, which is essentially training in bandaging. And this is going to give you a benefit for each of the guys you collect that has bandages that are needed to heal him during the game. So if you start training in bandages, you're going to want to try and collect guys that have bandages on their card. The game is going to end when this draw deck is depleted. Now, you'll keep going until each player has had an equal amount of turns, so the last player should always be the player to the first player's right. And if you need to refill further, you'll see that there's this evacuate card, and there are cards placed under it at the beginning of the game that are used to finish refilling, if necessary, during somebody's turns. But essentially, you're going to keep going until everybody's had an equal amount of turns after the draw deck runs out, and then you're going to calculate victory points, or prestige points as they call them. And you're going to get points for each of those soldiers that you've healed, the number on the card. You're going to get the points for the sergeants, depending on how many of people in their regiment that you have. You're going to get points for training, which is 2 points per training token that you have, for each matching guy that you've healed. So, for example, if I had 2 white training tokens and I healed this guy, it would be 4 points. And then you're going to subtract 2 points for each demerit you have. And after this, whoever has the most points will be the winner. And there you have Field Hospital. So this is a game with a little bit of a different feel. You're rolling those dice and you're somewhat out of control there. You may or may not have the medical supplies that you want or need. But it's kind of got a sense of urgency with those patients sliding down, escaping your ability to heal them, and kind of getting off of the board and penalizing you for not getting to the point of healing them. You may be trying to get enough goods to heal them, but just don't do it fast enough, or your opponent decides to force you to lose that patient, and you lose points even though you were trying. So it has a unique feel in that aspect, and I think it's a really good unique feel. Now, this is a Game Crafter game, so the components aren't necessarily what you would want to have for a final production game, but I guess that's kind of the give and take of self-publishing your own game. The components are by no means poor. You have those nice little plastic chips, and you have good cards, so all in all, I have very few complaints about the game. It does take up a decent amount of table space, so if you plan on playing, assure yourself that you have enough space in order to get this game out and played to a point where you can see all of the cards. Anyhow, if this looks like a game for you, you can check it out on thegamecrafter.com, maybe buy a copy for yourself, and I certainly hope that you enjoy it.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at dicetower.com. You can also find the latest board game news at dicetowernews.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Fun Again Games, the world's best game source. Fun Again Games has over 5,000 games available. Check them out at funagain.com.